Hello everyone, I'm Batpan, the bat who loves nature. Today I'll show you a more optimized way to type text letter by letter in Unity without being dependent on the FPS. This video is part of my Unity tips and tricks playlist. If you like Unity tips and tricks, you can actually check out the playlist through the channel. Also, I've published my own retro horror game, Fractured Psyche. If you like these types of games, you can actually download it using a link in the description. All the files used and created in this video are in my GitHub. You can get to it with a link in the description. Thank you so much for all your support. With all that being said, let's put on the mask and begin. I've created an empty scene here with a panel and a text, and this is the text we're going to be writing on. I actually created a function about it before. It's actually my first ever YouTube video, and that was the way I actually used it for my own game. And I found out that it had a bug. For example, when the FPS was lower than 60, for example 25 or 22 or something, then it would take more time to actually write the text. As I was porting my game on Android, I found out a way that I could actually write it, and it was not dependent on the FPS, and it would actually write it depending on the time. So let's go ahead and create it. I have an audio. It is from my game. Let's go ahead and create a script. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it scripts. Again, I say all the files used and created in this video will be linked in the description. You guys can download it from the GitHub. The script will be there as well. So I'm going to create a new script. I'm going to call it text type optimized. Double click to open it up. We're going to be actually using a text file here. To actually be able to use a text file inside your script and reference to it, you need to add this one up here. You're going to say using Unity engine.ui, which would actually let us use a UI in this script. First thing first, I need to reference the audio clip and the audio source to actually be able to play the clip. So I'm just going to create a reference to, I'm going to say public audio source. I'm going to call it source. And I'm going to need a reference to audio clip. I'm going to call it UI clip. And one more thing we need is a reference to the text file we just created. So I'm just going to say public text. I'm going to call it subtext. I name it the exact same thing as I did in my first ever YouTube video. As we did in the previous method, we have to do it inside an enumerator, because an enumerator would actually let us wait for some time, then actually type on stuff. So I'm going to do it inside an enumerator. So I'm just going to say enumerator. I'm going to call it type text CO, which stands for coroutine, and it has to take some values. So for the values it's going to take, I'm going to write it here, and if you don't know what I'm actually doing, I will explain it in the following minutes, so no worries. When we're actually calling this function, we need a reference to its subtext, the text we actually created and referenced up here. We need to get a text, and for its name I'm going to call it text component. I need a string which would actually cover the full text, and that is what we're gonna write, our sentence. So it's gonna be of type string. So string, I'm gonna call it full text. And we also need a reference, and this part is actually I added it for my game. You can not add it here. And it was, for example, in my own game I said, for example, I said this. It would be just I at the beginning, and the text would just appear letter by letter. So we need to get a string again of type. I'm gonna call it who said. Once you're actually calling this function, you have to tell this enumerator who said this sentence. You can even put it like empty. We also need a reference to its audio source, so we can actually play the audio. So I'm just gonna need a reference to audio source. I'm gonna call it again source with a small s. So these are all the things we're gonna be needing inside our enumerator, and I'm gonna actually just show you how we're gonna call it. Then I'm gonna actually create the function, show you guys how to create the function. Then again we're gonna return and explain it again. When we want to actually call this function, we have to say start coroutine, which would actually start an enumerator. So type text CO. As you see, it says you have to give the values. We have to give each of these a values. For the first thing, we need to give it a text value. So for the text, I'm gonna say subtext. Then we need a full sentence. We have to put it inside these two. For example, it says, hello, I'm Batpan. We need a reference to who said it. In this case, Batpan said it. Then we need a reference to the audio source, and the audio source is actually the source we created up here. Whenever you want to start typing, you just add this code and give these values, and it's gonna automatically write for you. If you don't have enough space to write it here, you can actually create a string up here. You can say temp string, which is empty by default, and instead of writing it here, you can just say temp string and write your sentence up here. Hello, I'm Batpan, and instead of writing all of it, just give temp string. If you don't want to write all the sentence here, it is an easier way to do it, but I'm actually gonna do it the way I actually did. Hello, path time. And we don't need the temp string. I just told you guys what to do if you don't want to, actually write the sentence here. That's how you call it, but let's go ahead and create the actual function. First thing first, we're gonna say who said this sentence. So we're just gonna say text component dot text. Text component is the subtext that we gave to our start coroutine right here, equal to who said. Who said is actually the person who said that this stuff, which is Batman in this case, and it is start with who said. We're gonna go ahead and create a float, a temporary float in here, which would actually have the value for the time spent. So spent time, which is equal to 0 by default. We need an integer for the character index, so we know which of these characters we are on and we have to write. So we need an integer. I'm gonna call it char index, which is equal to 0 again. We have to start playing the audio before writing it, so we're just gonna say start audio. I'm gonna put it inside here so you guys know this is for when we're actually typing. First we have to check if we actually have an audio source. We're just gonna say if source is not equal to null. If we actually have an audio source, if the value was actually given here, and if we have an audio source, we go ahead and play the audio. So we're just gonna say source dot play one shot, and the audio we want to play is UI clip. While this part is important, I'm gonna explain it. Our character index, the index we created, which is actually 0 by default, is less than full text dot length. If our character index is less than our full character, the amount of characters in here, these empty spaces are also recognized as a character. If it is actually less than its length, it means we have to write. We just created the condition. Let's go ahead and create the actual function for it. Spend time plus equal time.delta time. So our spend time is gonna increase by 1 each second. It is actually the same as seconds. So it is dependent to the time and not to the FPS. We need to create a new integer, temporary integer inside here. I'm gonna call it new char count, which is equal to mathf dot floor to int. It's gonna say, as you see, it says spend time divided by. One more thing I forgot to tell you guys that was actually needed when we actually wanted to call this function was the time we wanted it to take to actually write stuff. For example, I want this function to take 1 second. We can actually tell it how much time we want it to be spent while writing this. You can actually call it here, for example, 1 second, but a better way for it is to actually do it inside this. When we're actually asking for some stuff, we're needing a float in here. Float, I'm gonna call it duration. So it's gonna take 1 second to write this stuff. It's actually one more thing that we need. As you see, it's gonna give an error because we have to give the duration here. For example, 1f is the duration. We first give it the text component, then we give it this full sentence string, then we give it the float of duration. Again, we give it the string of who said it, then we give it the audio source. So we're just gonna say spend time divided by duration times full text dot length. So this line will actually count down the amount of text written inside this amount of time that has passed. Then we're gonna go ahead to the next section. We're gonna say if new character count is bigger than character index, the index we're actually on, we have to go inside this one and say text component the text equal to who said plus full text dot substring start from 0 to new character count. So it's gonna write it from the character 0 to the character we're actually on, and by the end we have to say character index equal to new character count. And when I was doing this, I encountered a bug that it would not wait for the next frame in here. What I searched for and found out was we could actually add yield return null in here, so it would actually wait for the next frame. So wait for the next frame. Then after the while, down of the while, we go ahead and say to ensure that the full text with the who said is actually being displayed and no errors are available and nothing weird is happening, we have to add this part, which is text component, our subtext.text equal to who said plus full text. Then we have to stop the audio from playing when we are finished typing. So we're just gonna say stop audio playing. And I'm gonna put it inside this one. Again, we're gonna check if we actually have an audio source. So source is not equal to null. We go ahead and we say source dot stop, which will actually stop the audio source when playing the audio. So that's everything we had to cover. When you want to call this function, you go ahead and do this. Put the subtext, type the text, tell the time it's gonna take, then who said it, then the audio source. And that's how we did it. I know it sounded a little bit confusing, but it's gonna work. I hope I explained it okay, because I know it sounded a little bit confusing. I hope I explained it okay. Let's go ahead and check it out. Let's go ahead and check this part out. I'm gonna create an empty game object. I'm gonna call it script folder. I'm gonna drag and drop my script on it. It needs an audio source. For the audio source, I'm gonna put the audio source on my script holder. It doesn't matter, so I'm gonna select my script holder, add component, audio source. And I can drag and drop my audio source from here, or I can drag and drop my object here, or I can even click on the circle and find it. For the UI clip, we need the audio. I'm gonna click on this lock, so wherever I click, inspector won't go. I'm gonna go to my audio folder. I'm gonna drag and drop my audio here. Then it's gonna need a text. The text is actually the text we created, so I'm gonna drag and drop it here. You can click on the circle to find it, and I'm gonna unlock it. By default, when the scene starts, it's gonna start writing because we actually did it inside void start. As you saw, we actually encountered a bug, and the bug was actually fixed by adding a parenthesis here. So you have to open a parenthesis here and close it here to make all of them inside this actual math.floor to int function. We can go ahead and check it out again. As you see, hello, I'm Batman. Once it's finished, it's done. We can go ahead and give it different sentences and different time. For example, I'm gonna say it's gonna take 2 seconds. We're gonna say, thank you for watching this video. You can go ahead and check it out. You can actually give the amount from outside the code. You have to do the same thing. You have to create string. I'm gonna call it temp string, and you can make it serialized field, which you can actually change from outside the code, and just temp string. You can actually change your sentence from outside the code. So script holder, you can say thank you for watching the video. You can actually give the sentence from outside the code or inside the code. I did do it from inside the code. That's actually how to do it. So that's actually how to create this typing effect that I actually use in my own game Fractured Psyche that I'm actually porting on Android. It was the way that actually worked for me. It was a more optimized way. It was actually harder, but it is actually more optimized. It doesn't have the bugs of the first method of doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, a like would be amazing, and subscribe to see more contents like this. You can tell me any comments, any opinions, any scenarios, or anything you want me to cover. I would be very happy to answer them, and if I can, I would actually cover it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.